Hello, I'm Dr. Cheryl, and welcome to Wake Up with Dr. Cheryl, Wealth Transformation. Our show is raising the awareness and consciousness in the relationship with wealth and unconditional love. Always remember that your present situation is not your final destination. The best is yet to come by Zig Ziglar. Our show this evening is about the wealth of truth and change with our special guest, Michael Pote, otherwise known as Michael Pote. Michael has had a long and varied history in healthcare. Michael has been an avid champion for listening to the path to success. He always seeks win-win relationships that last because all benefit. He utilizes his extensive teaching background to educate and inspire. Michael has significant clinical understanding and is often mistaken for a physician. Michael believes in having not only in an in-depth understanding of the solution he provides, but more importantly, a deep understanding of the problem he is trying to solve. Michael's his specialties include international business development, medical device sales, and marketing, new product introductions, and team leadership. Michael attended Syracuse University, Martin J. Whitman School of Management. He has a Bachelor's of Science and a Master's of Education from Syracuse University. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We met in an Uber car.
Yes, we did.
And I'm very grateful that we had as much time to be able to communicate, because I was fascinated and I knew you would be a wonderful guest because you are very articulate with your communication and your experience. But I feel a little kind of behind the ball because your bio is so modest. I really didn't, I feel like I couldn't give the full expression. So maybe you could just kind of sum up where you're from exactly and how you got here.
I grew up in New York and had a fascinating childhood. That's enough for another show. And moved around the United States, did a variety of things, and landed in Nashville, where I became very involved in the Jewish community there. I have two older boys and a younger boy, and my middle son really didn't like going to Sunday school, Hebrew school.
Oh, yeah.
And dragged me up to school one day to say it was so bad that he was quitting. And long story short, the principal of the school said he's right. It's really not geared towards teenagers, and we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I became involved as a teacher and turned the whole program around. But at the end of it, I realized that these were kids that we talk a lot about Israel, but had never been. So I created a program called Get Connected. And we took, if you graduated from Sunday school, I would take you to Israel for 2 weeks at no cost to you.
Oh.
And the first year we took 32 kids, and the second year we took 26, and the third year.
Nice.
And over that time, I fell in love with the country of Israel and then ended up moving there.
Yeah, wow. So when did you move there?
So in 2009, I made Aliyah. That's what Jews call it when they move to Israel. And Aliyah is a Hebrew word for going up, for rising. Mm-hmm. And so in theory, you're elevating yourself by moving to Israel and becoming part of the fabric there.
Does that, is that in alignment with being more Orthodox?
For most people, this is true. For most people, if I was to tell them that, they would say, oh, so you're a religious person. Mm. And for me, it was not that. I saw an opportunity to make a difference in a country that I don't think that anybody could argue needs to be made different, needs a lot of work. Mm. And that's not a comment on anybody there, it's just a comment on the situation. And that really called to me. That really said, come over and see what you can do. And I didn't know what that was exactly. I just felt like there was something there that I could do.
You were
so,
committed to it.
Yes, and so I moved.
In '09?
In '09,
Okay.
and spent 7 years there.
Wow.
Almost exactly 7 years, and found that to be significantly more challenging than I had anticipated.
And please share. I know you. Some of it is you know, kind of startling to me, but on the other hand, you know, I mean, things could be worse, I guess.
Sure.
But please share some of your experiences.
Sure. First, I would say that the news is not a reflection on the day-to-day operations of being in Israel. It's a vibrant place, good economy, people live well. So you have that contrasted with these occasional and very, very serious, deadly serious bouts with the people around them. And unfortunately, I was there one summer. My youngest son, Eitan, was 10 months old when the war started again. Mm-hmm. And we had lived in a location that from the previous war, the missiles were not strong enough to reach us. And so we felt very safe in moving to this community.
Now, is this with the Palestinians?
Yes. So this is coming out of Gaza, and we were living south of Tel Aviv, which is close to Gaza, but far enough away that we felt we were out of harm's way. That particular summer, which would have been almost 3 years ago, the Iranians had equipped the Palestinians with missiles that were significantly stronger. And my moshav, which is the name of the community that I lived in, a moshav, was hit 4 times. Once I was on my back porch and I didn't have a chance to get into the bomb shelter, and it struck the street behind me, and nothing. I wasn't harmed, but
you could
dirt
feel
was
the
blown.
backlash.
Yes, I felt the dirt and the gravel.
Did you have any idea that this was happening before you went there?
No. And I have to say that as Americans, we don't have any sense of this at all.
No,
and for
not
me,
really.
as an American, a bomb dropping on my neighborhood,
so
that's
foreign.
It's a comic book, it's a movie kind of a thing, but it's not real. So from that point, that really scared me, and from that point, we took it much more seriously. Also, the bombings began to be at night. So here I am with a 10-month-old. The bomb shelter is across the street and up the block a little bit. It's about a 10 or 15-second run.
So it's underground?
It's underground.
Yeah.
And so my wife and I had a drill that it was her job to open up all the doors and gather enough clothes. We had a pile of clothes ready. And then it was my job to grab the baby and run. Yeah. Now, at 10 months old, I had to make this fun to run across the street. Yes. But as we're running up the street, if you look over your shoulder, you're able to see the missiles incoming, literally incoming. And you're making it down the steps, often just to the steps, and they're hitting. And then we have people screaming in the bomb shelter and people crying, and then the baby is upset, and this would happen two and three times a night.
Oh my goodness.
And so every time you'd fall asleep, you awaken again, and you'd have to do this again and again.
So
you
had to do this multiple times.
Oh, throughout the entire summer. The pool was closed because you couldn't be caught in the pool when there was not enough time to exit a pool.
I'm just wondering how did your baby? You know,
he was fine until there was one evening in late July where he heard the alarms and started to cry, and that was the first time. So up until then, I don't think there was an association at all. And then there was an association on whatever level he had that. Yeah. But it clearly was upsetting, and he cried all the way to the bomb shelter and all the way in the bomb shelter. And we realized at that point how serious it was. It lasted another month, and then it stopped. But it was an experience that shook me terribly.
Down to
just
the
terrible.
Core level.
I mean, it's like living in a neighborhood that's not safe. You're always got one eye. And any sound that even remotely resembles the air raid warnings that go off, you startle. you're now conditioned to move and start all. And it was a very, very difficult summer, especially having a baby on board.
Oh, goodness. I know you had mentioned that, that the Israelis were actually killing some of their own people. Were the bombs initiated by the Israelis, or was this, the Palestinians, were they trying to make it look like it was the Palestinians?
I don't know. It was, I don't know. It's hard to tell. The politics involved there are so deep and so complex. For me, it didn't matter to me which side you were on or what your background was. There were people suffering everywhere. It didn't matter whether you were the bomber or the person receiving.
Right. The fact that it's happening.
The fact that it's happening, it's happening, and it's a crime.
Man's inhumanity.
It really is. It's hard to explain. And then that went away for a little while, and then what was the final straw for me to leave was 3 Jewish boys, 2 Israelis and an American boy, were kidnapped just outside of Jerusalem and taken out to a field and shot. Now these were 16-year-old boys.
Oh my God. Now who shot them?
I think they caught them. Again, it's always hard to tell who they're catching and all of that. But they caught them. They caught 3 Palestinian men, and I don't know what the end of that story is.
Right. You just
the tragedy, besides that as a tragedy, was that someone, a Jewish extremist, then took 2 teenage boys, Jewish teenage boys, and they went and they captured a 13-year-old Palestinian boy and set him on fire in the woods and murdered him. And that was it. You can't explain how we can kill each other's children. And what was upsetting for me and got me packing was, as I was walking around my neighborhood, and I was terribly distraught by this, it wouldn't leave my head. It was on my mind constantly. And I would share with my neighbors what a tragedy it was. And they would say to me, well, they killed, and I said, wait, you're not going to give me a justification, right? That's not what you were meaning to say. You were simply going to say something like, that's terrible, right? And of course they didn't. And that's where we are in that part of the world, where my actions, regardless of how horrendous and despicable they are, I'll justify them by your horrible and despicable actions. And at that point, I realized that I can't have an influence in that environment. I can't make a difference here.
I guess it's conditioning, too.
Yes.
I mean,
many, many years, although one of the big misunderstandings about the Middle East is that this has gone on for centuries. It's less than 100 years old, this issue.
It's really between the Palestinians.
Yes. It's less than 100 years old, and really started in and around 1913. But prior to that, there was this didn't exist. There was not an issue between Arabs and Jews, no more than there were issues between any other groups of people. So sometimes they say, well, this has been going on for centuries. No, it hasn't. That's yet another myth about this situation. And it allows me the excuse of not doing something about it, because it has been around for centuries. So what am I going to do?
Right.
It's not. It's a new phenomenon. We can do something about it. But I will tell you that on both sides, there is no will to do anything about it.
You were in it firsthand. What do you think? Why is this happening?
I think it serves a lot of purposes. It doesn't make sense, so you can't make logic out of it. That's not the purpose.
No.
It's not a matter of winning. Sometimes we go to war because we want to win, right? We want to conquer territory or.
But isn't this what this is about, though?
No,
between the Palestinians and the Israelis, Israelis won't give up that. This is what I have been educated on, is that the Israelis won't give up that land, and why should they?
That's right. So that is true, but in fact, if you remember that much of Gaza had settlements in it many, many years ago, And the Israelis very reluctantly, and it was a terrible situation, soldiers had to go in and remove the Israelis from Gaza proper, from the settlements there.
The Israeli army?
The army went in and removed the Jewish settlers. And so they returned the land, and it not only did it not stop, it escalated. So it's really not about land.
Oh, okay.
And again, any discussion around it gives the sense that there's some logic or way that I'm going to be able to explain this. And the fact is it's not. It's not explainable, and it will be with us for many, many more years to come because, again, there's no will. We just elected in Israel by a vast majority a group of leaders that are bent on keeping this going the way it is. And the same with the Palestinians. The Palestinians elected Hamas as their leadership. So you say to yourself, this is not bad leaders because if they're bad, they're there because I put them there or another group of people put them there. So this is really people saying this is the scenario that we want, even though I'm going to tell you it's terrible and bad and all that. There's a desire on some level to keep this going, and it's a terrible distraction. Israel could be a great country, and the Arabs, we know from past centuries, could be a great people. They gave us algebra. They gave us all kinds of things. Yeah. They were a gifted culture, and today they're too bent on this as the mode of operations, and the Israelis are also terribly distracted. Much of the Israeli economy is geared around the army and protection, and think about that money and time and energy being dedicated to some other force. Wow, could be phenomenal.
Yeah, I don't understand. I guess I'll never understand it. I mean, how can you understand the mentality?
I guess that's what I learned. I think I went over with a fairly ignorant view, probably like what a lot of people had, and worked very, very hard to make sense, only to find that there is no sense to be made, and that's a reasonable conclusion. Sometimes we're not happy with that. I don't want that to be the end.
It's the knowing that, and letting go.
Yes.
It's hard.
That's right. And so lack of understanding means that I'm just not working hard enough. and the fact is that no, sometimes people behave in ways that frankly we just don't understand, and it just doesn't make sense from a logic perspective, and we need to just accept that. That's not logical behavior.
Yeah,
it's doing something for you, otherwise you'd stop it. But it's a shame because a lot of people are hurt in this process. Just so many people are hurt.
I will never understand it. And it isn't just the Israelis. It's the Irish and the English and the Turks and the Greeks and you know and the Arabs. I mean, I know.
Yes, we're the only animal on earth that wages war. And yet we see ourselves as somehow higher than the animals around us, and yet
the behavior isn't.
Yeah, it's hard to say that with a straight face.
It isn't.
Yes.
And it seems to be getting worse. In Turkey there was a bomb that went off?
Yes, in the airport today. Yeah.
I just, it's 2016. I know the planet is overpopulated, but I'm almost speechless because there's so much going on also to numb the brains of society, like geoengineering. The chemtrails are numbing the minds with Alzheimer's and autism. I mean, it's gone up 10,000% in 5 years. Yeah. What is going on?
Yeah, we're doing something. Yeah.
And that's within our own country, Monsanto and the government and Bill Gates and, I mean, it's been proven that those names are part of it. So I just don't understand, Is it a power trip? Is it, they think that, the population should dissipate, I don't understand it. I really have a hard time with that. But getting back to the Israeli thing. So would you go back? Would you,
Oh, I will go back.
I mean, to live.
Yes, my wife is Israeli.
Okay.
Oh, to live?
Yeah.
Would I go back? As I sit here today, I have a lot of feelings that I need to make peace with, to be perfectly honest. And today I would not move back, because to move to a place, whether it's San Francisco or Dallas or Tel Aviv, at least for me, it means being apart, being connected, making a difference. You're additive to your community, right? It was something less before you arrived. And I don't think that I realized, I guess I should say, that I will not have that impact over there. I'm not an additive.
It must be kind of disheartening to a degree. Not that you can make a direct impact, but to see what's going on.
It is disheartening. It really is disheartening. And raising what was then a 1-year-old, now a 3-year-old, in that environment, I realized that this was not what I wanted him to see as a guide for how do I live my life. And and
as
it's
an
important.
Example.
Yes. And I realized from raising my other 2 boys that you're under an illusion if you think you're raising your child by yourself. That you really raise your child by the people. It
takes a village.
That's right. And I was very fortunate with my 2 older boys to have other adults so different than me who brought talents and ideas that I could never bring to my boys. And yet, by surrounding them with people like this, they got such a rich upbringing. And you're there more as sort of the coach or the director of the film.
The guider.
You're definitely not one of the main actors. You're really behind the scenes. And so that's what I'm looking for my youngest now, is how do I surround him with people who are going to be additive to his life.
Well, it sounds like you've made the right decision, and you've settled in your home, and you've got like you said initially, you've got Israelis coming here.
Yes.
That you can share your enriching.
Yes, I'm very excited about it. We have beautiful neighbors who lived next door to us in Israel, and I will tell you that my little one probably spent as much time at their house as he did at his own house. And they were the kind of neighbors that you wish for. People who love you as much and care for you as much as their family, and you do the same for them.
Unconditional.
That's right. And we had that relationship, and when we left, that was a real loss. So we're bringing them back now. We're going to return the favor, and one of the children, one of the young people in that family is going to come live with us for a little while, and I'm excited to share, just like she shared her country with a foreigner, I'm excited to share what we have here with her, and so I'm hoping they'll stay for a while, and I'm pretty sure they will.
Sounds like it. Well, that's great. Well, I wanted to talk about, I was so impressed with you being open and honest about your experience in Israel, because I had no idea. I mean, I'm not Jewish myself, but I'm surrounded by Jewish people, and I get other opinions on how it is, but I hadn't really talked to anybody that was directly involved and lived there and had that one-on-one experience. So my heart I'm disheartened by it, but on the other hand, all we can do is pray for it, for the healing, for whatever that, means to help heal the planet's people. I mean, that's where I come from, is raising the consciousness, across the whole planet, because it needs it. Because every day there's things happening that are just, death, the wars, the small wars that are going on. So love is the only thing that's going to help heal and keep humanity. Please.
For sure.
Please.
And it's really up to the generations that are coming up
Which is just a perfect segue, because not only were we in a dialogue about your experience, in Israel, but we started to talk about the millennial generation, which are, gangbusters with the tech industry.
Yes.
And, I did a little research, and I just wanted to make sure that people understand about the age, 18 to 34-ish. That's, I'm sure there's always exceptions,
Sure.
always. But in that age area, I deal with them almost daily, and I see what's happening. And I'm very concerned. And you and I were discussing it, and I know that you deal with them directly. Yes. You educate them and you manage them.
Yes.
And, I want to give the benefit of all that we can to them, because they're the emerging generation that's coming up. And, but I'm concerned. I'm concerned about some of maybe maybe it's immaturity, maybe it's just that they haven't had the time to grow. I don't know. Anyway. I would like to hear from you about this, because it's, I think, extremely important to talk about this. I've been wanting to have this subject on my show, but it's getting the right person, the right information.
Yes. I think so much of who we are as people has to do with what gifts we bring to the table, what kind of talents we bring. And I think this is a group that really has had an enormous opportunity to discover and develop talents. And lo and behold, you've got this incredible tech sector. The other 50% of who we are comes from the struggles that we've had to face and how we have dealt with them. And of course, if you've struggled once, you're not very good at that. And if you've struggled twice, you're twice as good at that. And if you've struggled a lot, you've really developed a set of skills around struggle, which has to do with being able to listen and perceive as to what's going on. I'm in a conflict right now, and I've got to be able to be calm about that and detect and decipher what the issue is. I have to process that calmly. I can't panic at every situation. And then I've got to be able to develop a plan. What am I going to do about it? And then execute it, which has to do with things like being able to communicate well, sometimes hard messages, being able to ask more questions, because frankly, I don't think I understand the problem. And
how can you solve the problem if you don't understand it?
Right. And I think that my experience has been, having two millennials, myself right now, that as parents, and I speak about that in a very broad and general way, we've also contributed to this situation by removing that 50% from our children's lives, the ability to struggle.
Removing the obstacles.
Yes.
And I know for myself, my daughters will be 26, and I raised her by myself, and I know I was trying to overcompensate because she didn't have a father. So, if I'm at fault around that, well, I did the best I could.
Sure, but I think also parents overcompensated in the same vein. I don't want my children to struggle what I did. We see our struggles as something to avoid, as opposed to something that actually made me who I am.
That's right. It builds character.
Absolutely. And look, let's face it, we don't throw our children into harm's way.
No.
You don't have to.
But
you just have to allow life to
Yes.
occur.
Yes.
So I was teaching a course in Jerusalem, and there was a young man in my class who frankly did nothing, and I failed him. And the rabbi came to me and said, you can't fail him. I mean, how's he going to feel? And I said, I don't know. I would be upset, and I would think, wow, I really screwed up. And he said, no, but you You can't have a kid leave your classroom that way. I said, it may be the best lesson that I can provide. He may be my star student.
Yeah, that's right.
I may be the best teacher he has ever had because I failed him.
Yeah.
Long story short, the parents called me. And the parents said, you cannot do this. And I said, no, I did. And I want to share with you that it is the best lesson your son can receive from me. I thought about all the other stuff I taught, not half as good as this. And they said, I'm going to ask you to please change your mind and at least pass him. And I said, is your son standing there? I assume that he's in the room. And they said, well, yes, he is. And I said, would you put him on the phone? I'd like to speak with him privately, if you don't mind. Have him pick up the receiver. So he picked up, and I said, you need to get off the phone, and you need to own this problem. You failed. You know you failed. Own it. And then this is over. There's no need to feel bad. We all make mistakes. You'll never make as many mistakes as I have. But now's the time to be big about it and own it and learn from it and move on. Get off the phone and tell your parents. And he said, you're right. And he did.
Well, he matured up.
That's right. And I think so often we want to intervene to prevent life from happening because it was a situation that I would have avoided as a young man, as a child. And so therefore I don't even want my child to even be involved in it. And at the same time, you got to say, but that's really where so much of my character comes from, was learning to work through those really, really difficult, terrible situations. Nobody died. Everybody comes out the other side.
Right.
And so I think we are, in large part, responsible for this generation.
I just want to share one story. When I was a senior in high school, I put off taking speech. And the teacher was my brother's teacher, and she really didn't like my brother. But I was very shy, believe it or not. I did not want to speak. I actually would skip class because I didn't want to get up in front of the class. She flunked me. And my friend said, Cheryl, look, you've got an F. You've got it. Right. So, of course, I thought, okay, I have to graduate. This is the only thing that's holding me back. So I went to the counselor. My dad and I went to the counselor. And we made arrangements. And I actually went, I braved it up enough to go talk to the teacher. And you know what? At the end, she gave me a B. She wouldn't give me an A. But she gave me a B and gave me a big hug when I graduated. And that was one of the best experiences that I ever had.
It's with you today.
Yeah,
it's on your mind
I can't
today.
stop talking.
Right.
Anyway,
that's right.
You know, so it's kind of in the same vein of what you're saying.
So I think part of the idea of working with this population, there's a phrase called fierce conversations. And it doesn't, fierce is not used as a violent or an aggressive term. It just means clarity, maybe beyond what we would normally use as clarity. So being crystal clear with this group.
Do you think it's honesty?
Well, it certainly is honesty.
I mean,
it certainly is honesty.
Because honesty, I know, can be hurtful, you know, but it's how you say it.
I was just talking to one of my managers today who has to terminate one of the folks in this group.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, I've put it off and I've put it off. She's just going to fall apart. And I said, so let's talk about your communication around this, because it's really no need for her to fall apart. We're not here to diminish her in any way, shape, or form.
Not.
And we want to be crystal clear that her skill set and the role that she's in is not a good match. But in fact, this is a group that, again, because we've protected them, is not able to listen to a conversation like that and not walk away and be devastated by it. So we have to get them used to it and not shield them. So here's a manager who is yet again, and this woman is now in her late 20s, so we're still protecting her from that hard conversation because she might she might be upset by it.
But that's how you learn.
That's right. So I said, look, I'm going to give you 3 things that I would say to her as, what can I take away from this experience and be better at my next experience?
Yeah, right.
That's the conversation.
Right.
We're not here to diminish. We are here to grow. And
that's the key.
And at the end, he said, well, I like that. And I said, okay, so it's not about her liking you, right? And it's not about you liking her. This is a matter of respect. And you do respect her, and she will respect you. Not on the phone when you talk to her.
No.
But ultimately she will. And it's because you're going to do this with respect and care and love. And love is not a mushy thing.
No.
Love is doing
Kindness.
right by people.
Kindness.
That's right. You may do her, again, just like my student,
right.
You may do her one of the best favors she's ever received by letting her know clearly, with a lot of clarity, exactly where she went wrong in this process.
Right.
And she'll be a better person for it.
Absolutely. So is it done? Has it been?
Well, I'll find out.
Oh, okay.
He's still dragging his feet. He's also one of that group. So
okay.
again, not only
it's almost because they haven't experienced challenge, they haven't grown emotionally.
Yes.
That because I deal with them almost every day, and I see that they're focused on the computer, the phone, the apps, creating apps, almost in a sci-fi thinking, and I don't want to sound like I'm. Well, this is how my interpretation of it is that they're. I've seen them where they're almost fantasizing, and because they don't have the emotional maturity, that they're just stuck in their minds.
Well, look, let's face it. You don't need a lot of maturity to interact with a spreadsheet or to push a button and make a reservation. I don't have to talk to you on the phone anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
I just push a button, it does it for me. And therefore, negotiation is not part of their repertoire.
No.
And how to deal with an upset person.
Humanity can't survive like that.
Right.
I mean, I've had a one-on-one experience with going to a corporate headquarters not too long ago, and all I wanted to do was to talk to somebody. And the way I was treated was, and this is a 20-some-year-old, get on the help desk on the computer and go to the help center. I said, you know what?
Right.
I just want to talk to somebody.
Right.
I don't want to talk to the computer. I want to talk to a human. She points over to this gentleman. I didn't even want to call him a gentleman, but I'm being nice. And he came over to me, and I said, well, who are you? He goes, I'm security. And I thought, wow, this is the way humanity is dealing with people today. Yeah. I was really shook up because to me it's unacceptable. Because you're not resolving things. Right. But to have that experience, there's no resolution.
Right.
There's no resolution, period.
Right.
And that is part of that age that are dealing with, how they're dealing with things.
Yes, and I think we have to make sure that we're not being that parent as in other roles that we play, whether you're a boss or a neighbor or whatever that other role is, that we're not continuing that idea of I want you to like me. That's really the source of it. When I was much younger, and even today, I require people who are younger than me to call me Mr. And it used to be a joke in my office, and I worked in a tech company. And so they all did it, but it was a joke. And I said, that's okay, because as long as you're pretending, that's as close to reality.
Respect.
That's right.
Period.
And so they used to say, Mr. Pote, this kind of thing. And I remember one young man said, I just can't have your boys calling me Mr. And I said, my boys will only call you Mr. because you're not their friend.
Yeah.
You're an adult. They're children.
Yeah.
One day, he was in a dry cleaner or some type of an experience like that, and he came into work and he said, I got it. there was a guy behind the counter today, and he called me John, and he treated me like I was friend. And I said, no, I'm a customer. I'm an adult. You're a young teenager. I expect a little respect. You're going to call me Mr. You see, my name's right on the dry cleaning slip. My name is Mr. And he said, and I thought of you. And I thought that was important, that moment, to define the relationship that you and I are having. And we're not buddies. We're not going to go out and have a beer together. I'm an adult and you're a young person.
Yeah.
And that's our relationship. And we need that Mr. or Ms. or whatever your title is to remind us of that.
Right, right.
I know even parents in my neighborhood whose children were calling them by their first name. Not mom and dad, or my kids call me Pop.
I love it when I'm called, I mean, there's a love-hate relationship, but I get called ma'am a lot.
Yes.
And I like that because it shows respect, but on the other hand, it makes me feel old.
It does, but you know what it is? It hands you the keys to what's your responsibility here. You're the older adult. That's
right.
your job.
That's right.
You may not like that idea, just like they don't like feeling like a kid sometimes.
Yeah, right.
But that is their job,
Yes.
and that's their role. And I think sometimes we don't like our roles, and as modern people, we want to be everything. I want to be a wise older person, but a young, good-looking guy. And I'm not. I am who I am, and I need to own that for the moment that I'm in.
Absolutely.
And we need to ask these people to also do that.
Absolutely.
Be the learner. It's another thing that millennials are not great at, learning, because
listening.
It means taking direction. And why do you think you know anything more than I do? I'll just Google it, and then I'll know as much as you do about it.
Yeah.
And this fantasy that we've created around anything you need to know, you look up on Google, and there you go, you know it.
I know, but see, it's that emotional, mental growth that happens. It's more mental on the millennials. And, granted, they aren't all like that. I've had some absolutely wise ones get in my car, and we talk about this, and they say they agree. They say, I don't understand. Why are they doing this? But see, they've obviously been through emotional pain and challenge that they came, they're coming.
That's right. They had to work through.
So it's not everyone, but there's a lot.
Right. So that's our challenge. I think we need to quickly, and as often as we possibly can, you don't need to create anything. There's no need to create struggles.
No,
but as struggles occur and you have a young person who needs to work through it, sit back and stay out of the way.
Yeah.
Say, wow, it sounds like you're struggling. Wow, that sounds difficult. No, I'm not intervening, and no, I'm not here to help, and no, gee, you might need a second job if you're going to pay for that.
Yeah, and I think it's harder for women.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
To let go, and I'm learning because I'm definitely learning.
Yeah, we used to call it tough love. I think that's a wrong phrase.
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of understanding what my job is, and my job is to make sure that you are as independent and functional as I can possibly get you to be, and frankly, that means letting you learn that functionality, not give you that functionality.
Right. And, well, that's the only way that they can learn.
And I think that's the call to action with this group.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just not sure. I have said there's going to be like an awakening, and they're at some point going to have to learn to deal with the emotional part of being human. And how are they going to do it? It's only by being challenged.
It's an interesting phenomenon. I work with doctors. And one of the phenomena that's occurring now in medicine is that the population of doctors that are coming up right now want to be employees. Now, our generation of doctors wouldn't think about it. Matter of fact, that's offensive for them to be employed by somebody else.
Right.
They are independent practitioners. Right. They own their own practice. There's a lot of risk involved in that.
Sure.
Take a lot of responsibility.
Right.
Today's doctors coming out, they are looking for employment situations, period. I want to work 9 to 5. I want to go home. I want a check. I want benefits. I want my days off, and I'm taking them. This is this group. And I think what's going to happen is not only are they going to have to grow, but we will begin to create a society that accommodates that. We already are in medicine. We are creating more and more and more employment opportunities.
Well, on some hand, that, not maybe entirely, but that might be good, because doctors are known to put so many hours away
Yes.
from the family.
Yes, that's
and
correct.
it's not good for the family life. So, on some respect, it's okay, but
Absolutely.
there's a balance,
No, absolutely. I think one of the things that this population has going for it is a much, much better sense of work-life balance.
Oh, okay, there.
Much better sense.
Right.
I look at my boys, and they both have very healthy social lives, much healthier than I had, because I was working.
Yeah.
I was on that treadmill, the drive, got to build, got to do more, got to do something else. And that's just of no interest to them. Their interest is, I've got this social life and I've got to make sure there's room for it. And then I've got work, and I'll make some room for that too. But it's not the work was way out of balance. So to their credit, I think that they've been able to establish that. And as employers, I don't get a second more out of them than the time that they are allotted, the 40 hours, and then they're out. And asking someone to work on the weekend, or ask someone to work late, and they look at you like, why would I do that? That's not the hours that we agreed to. So it's just culturally a very different situation.
Right. Huh. Well, I'm sure there's got to be exceptions in there.
Oh, sure.
Sure.
I
mean, because some of it's personality too.
Sure.
But true, interesting. Oh, my goodness. Is there anything else you'd like to share about that?
No, I think it's a great population. I think that that's their challenge. We had ours as kids, and but I think the big lesson is how to allow people to fall, not hurt themselves.
Yeah, but
to fall, to learn how to get up,
to grow.
To learn how to prevent falls next time. I think that's the key to this group.
Yeah. Well, I know that I definitely had my challenges all growing up. So, I probably I know I overcompensated to my daughter. Like I was saying, with no father around, I tried to make it easier for her, because I had a wonderful father, and I had a wonderful relationship with my father, and she won't have that. She doesn't have that.
Right.
So, but you don't know what if you don't have it, then you don't miss it.
Right. At the same time, that's a nice struggle for her to say, in some ways that makes you stronger.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, again, she's pretty strong.
Right. Sometimes adversity or challenging situations really, they diminish some people, and with others it causes them to rise and become stronger for it. So I think it's a great thing. Sometimes I do things to my boys, and I know they look at me like, why are you doing this, or why are you not intervening? And it's hard.
You mean letting them fall?
Letting them fall.
Yeah. I think it's the hardest part of being a parent is letting go. Yeah. And having it, being discerning and letting go, and a healthy let go.
Yes.
It is hard for a parent.
Yeah.
Because you always want to protect your kid,
right,
your child,
right,
and even if he or she is an adult.
Right.
So, but you're right. That you have to let go.
Yeah.
For them to be healthy, and for us to be healthy.
Right. Right. Yeah. I remember when my oldest son was learning to drive. Apparently, he was driving and I was in the passenger seat, and he cut somebody off. What I didn't know, because I didn't have access to the rearview mirror, is that this gentleman followed us home.
Oh.
Followed us all the way home. It was quite a distance. My son pulled into the driveway, and we both got out of the car, and this man, who was much larger than I was, got out of the car and approached my son. And I stopped him. I said, talk from where you are. is there something wrong? And he said, yes. This guy, I said, first he's a boy and he's my son. This guy did what? He cut me off and I have a baby in the car. And I said, well, that is concern. And he began to move at us again. I said, you're not to move another inch.
Yeah.
Say what's upsetting you. My son is here and he's going to listen to you.
Yeah.
And that guy brought my son to tears. And I let him do it. And then the guy took another approach. I said, you're done now. He got the lesson. And I will follow up when we get inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're not to move. That's not the lesson.
No, no.
And so he got back in the car and he drove away. We got in the house and my son was devastated.
Oh.
And he said, he could have hurt me. I said, he could have.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. What did you learn? And he said, but Pop. And I said, these things happen. You cut that man off.
Yeah.
That's a reality.
Yeah.
Okay? So what do you learn from this? How do we walk away from this? He was not going to hurt you. That's the line I draw. You will not be hurt. But I didn't chase him away because he had something to say and it was true and it was real and you know it. He said, I didn't think I cut him off. I said, but you did.
Yeah.
And
that's
he
taking
learned from
responsibility.
that. That's right. But he was just sitting there and crying and crying. It was a
yeah.
scary, scary, scary situation.
Well, yeah.
But again, how do you where do you draw the line
yeah.
on that? And
Yeah.
and my son, if he was sitting here, he would say, "I remember." It was one of those moments.
Yeah. And he'll never forget it.
He'll never forget. Never
Yeah.
forget that.
Wow. Yeah. I have a little story that my dad taught me when I was 5. My dad had his garage and his tools were all in the right place. He was very organized. He didn't like to let anybody borrow them because normally they didn't bring them back. So I was totally aware of that. But I asked him if I could borrow his industrial broom so the neighbors could use it. I said, can I borrow it? Okay, you borrow it. Well, I took it next door so the neighbors could use it. So when I came back, my dad said, did you use he knew what I did. And he said, did you use it? And I said, yeah. He said it again. Did you use it? Until I had to fess up and I lied.
Right.
He said he had the hardest time, but he whacked me on the butt for lying, and I ran upstairs and cried. I'll never forget that.
That's right.
My face always shows when I lie. Always. At 5.
Great
You
lesson
know.
learned. Great lesson learned.
Anyway, yeah. It saved me a lot of pain, but it's also caused pain because sometimes being honest, but I've learned it's how you say it. And that takes practice.
It does.
Being honest in a caring, kind way. It isn't always easy.
Yes.
Especially when you're angry. I have to walk away when I'm angry because I don't want to say something that's really going to be hurtful.
It's interesting. I worked in a company where over time, anybody who needed to be terminated in their position, I asked that I do it. The bad news was that I became known as the hatchet man. I was the guy to fire you. What people didn't realize, unless you were in that moment with me, was that the reason that I asked to do it was I felt that it was at that moment that we had to raise the stakes on love and respect.
Right.
And I used to always tell people, I know it doesn't feel like it, but I'm going to love on you a little bit right now. Because if we do this well, and I think we can, you're going to be bigger for it.
Yeah.
And you're actually going to end up in a better place. And I've got $1 here. And I'd put $1 on the table and say, that $1 says that I'm right. That you're going to come back in, 60 days, 90 days, maybe a year. And you're going to say, that was the best thing that you ever did, firing me. Now I know that sounds like hooey, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to leave the $1 there. And you're going to come back and match it, because it is. And I'm going to tell you why. And it's at that moment that I was able to say, let me tell you what your downfall is here, or what you need to work on. And it was a hard moment. And I just didn't trust anybody else with this very, very, very important moment.
Vulnerable.
Because what was said, just like in the garage, what was said to you is going to be with you for a long time.
Right.
It's that kind of a moment. And so, wow, how many moments do we get like this where I can actually stay with you for many, many years to come? What comes out of my mouth better be good.
Yeah.
It better be right. And so that's why I used to do it.
And it is easier to do it on a professional level than with your family,
of course.
you know, because that emotional tug.
Yes.
Our time has come down,
Wow.
and I am just very grateful that you came to share, because like I said, when I first met you and we were communicating, I thought this is very valuable, very valuable.
Thank you.
And thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For coming.
My pleasure.
I'll leave you with this. Never give up, even when things look impossible. Be grateful, and be grateful for your freedom of choice, freedom to learn, to earn, and discern. Eat healthy. Good nutrition feeds the mind and your body temple. Feed your spirituality and meditation and prayer. Love yourself unconditionally. Stop criticizing, stop judging, forgive yourself and others. Stop allowing others to dominate the way you feel and think about yourself. Be compassionate with yourself first. Share your abundance and wealth with others in whatever form that may be. When fear knocks, let faith answer the door. Remember the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Be impeccable with your word. Use the power of the word in the direction of truth and love. Don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. Don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Wealth is the ability to fully experience life, by Henry David Thoreau. Thank you for Marin TV for facilitating our show, and especially to my crew, Eric and Brad. Whew, they're doing it, just the 2 of them. If you like our show, please let us know at #MarinTV or on our Facebook page. Please support and become a member of Marin TV. Bye for now, until next time.